if you're in command or not. I have to approve the budget. I want a reason to approve the budget. Help us. Give us the information we need. One of these days, this county is going to be faced with some reformation of the property tax structure. Currently, we're nice. We give community service districts, a lot of them, an awful lot of money. Is that a good thing to do? I mean, we're going to have to look at all this. You know what's going on at the state level. We need to be able to show them in our budget whether we can accept, I think the number for this county is around 480 of their prisoners or their probationers or whatever they might be. You know, I need to be able to tell the chief probation officer, no, you can't have any more money because we're going to spend it on the sheriff's department. I mean, we've got to get this sorted out. Just saying I'm the sheriff here, I'm going to meet the budget next year. I need to understand what you're going to meet. I'm willing to work with you on that. I'll help you. Tell me when you want to sit down. I'll come down, we'll sit down, and I'll put the boxing gloves on, and you and I'll get in the corner and find out about your budget. So, but we need to work to see that. And I was hoping that we could do it today or another day before we get into the deep budget system, because if we don't, I don't know what's going to happen. So I think this board would like to help you be successful, because if you're successful, we have good law enforcement services in our county, and we need that. We recognize that. You know, I looked at a new car on a dealer's lot here the other day, and I'd really like to have it, but I have to be able to afford it. As much as I'd like to have it, I have to figure out if I can really afford it or not. So our job is, what can our citizens afford? What do we go find grants for? What do we find other revenues for? That's what we have to look at. You know, I've fought with 3 sheriffs now about getting law enforcement on the Rubicon Trail. And every year we manage to get grants for them. They haven't spent all their grants. It's a mistake. We shouldn't leave any of that money on the table. We should spend it on law enforcement on our trail here in this county. I mean, so those are the kinds of things that we need your help with, John. We need to look at these things. We're not trying to run you off the cliff. We're trying to help here and put something together that we can say to our citizens, yeah, we got an understanding of how they run the sheriff's department. We know what the staffing pattern is. We know why we're doing these things this way. We'd like to help. Help us help you.
Okay, but just so we're clear, is it the board's intent to determine how I run my sheriff's office through the budgetary process?
But you show me 380 employees, or 390, or almost 400 employees. Mm-hmm. I'm worried about deputies. So
am I.
I'm not so worried about clerical. I'd like to see what this load is. I'd like to see. And if I think you got too much of something, I'll say whack so much out of your budget, and you'll have to decide whether that's deputies or clerical or correctional or sergeants or captains or lieutenants. That's your job. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. 2 things I got to say over. One thing I got to say over is how many dollars. The other thing I got to say over is how many positions. I want to help you with that.
You know, John, I'm going to answer your question. You may force us to do that. If we don't have the information, we don't have the structure, we don't have the plan, we don't have the organizational charts and how you want to run your department, and we're kept in the dark and off in the corner, you will force us to do that, and I don't want to do that. But I would say that same thing if you were DOT or your Health and Human Services or any agency. If I don't have the help and the information and the numbers, I will be forced to come up with a number, and that number may not be workable for you. And I agree with Supervisor Sweeney's comment. I want to make sure the Sheriff's Department is successful based upon the resources that are available to that, and we will have to make decisions.
Okay.
Finish? Supervisor Briggs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, John, I'm going to tell you it's refreshing to have a sheriff in front of us saying he's going to meet the CAO's goals. And I thank you. Your success, however, is part of our consternation, because we let $6 million go to the sheriff that he didn't need. And you've been able to come forward to us and say, hey, there's $6 million and we're gonna meet it and we'll cut it and we're gonna be all right this year. Speaking for myself, I feel a little red-faced that there was that much, that's almost 10% in the budget. And so I agree with the spirit of what the other supervisors are saying, is I want to really know and understand. This board has taken the DOT, we've taken general services, IT, and we're going through them with a fine-tooth comb. And yours, of course, is the largest budget. And I think we would like to have a full understanding of what occurs so we can support you. I don't think any of us are trying to do anything but support you. That said, I'd like to go to a couple of things. One of the questions I've always had, and you talked, Supervisor Nutting talked about the census. And, Lake Tahoe census, the population to our Sheriff's Office staffing combined with South Tahoe PD, I thought today I was really eager because I believed I was going to get an answer to, hey, we're understaffed up in Lake Tahoe, or we're overstaffed, or we're properly staffed. I've always thought it's been very well overstaffed, but I really don't know. And I thought today, when I read through this weekend, I was looking for the answer. On the page 4 of 4, you talk about 504, and your words are, unless actions are taken to curtail or offset 504 increases and employee benefit increases, the net county cost will continue to increase. What would I think I understand what curtailing means, but what's an offset?
Offset through other funds in the general fund that are used to fund other sources or other programs or other things in the county.
Okay. That makes sense. The letter's fairly, it talks quite a bit about the 504 and the increases and its ills. What do you think? I mean, what do you think needs to be done to curtail 504? And how would you do it?
Well, one of the things I mentioned earlier was up until 3 years ago, from the board, from my standpoint, from the sheriff's standpoint, the board fully funding 504 through the general fund. As far as what the board can do to curtail 504, that would be something that you'd have to talk to the voters about. Right now, the voters say that they wanted the 504. They said it twice, first in Measure A and then when they adopted the charter. So I think that tells the board where their priorities are in those areas. I believe in the spirit of 504.
I do too.
I think I need that in order to be able to hire and retain. Even though these are tough times, this year they got a raise. I don't know what next year's going to happen. Typically, local government or state government or government follows behind private sector, and vice versa. When private sector's picking back up, government goes down, and it takes a while to pick back up, so it always lags. I would hate to see the position that the sheriff was back in the 70s, where deputies were qualified for food stamps. it's a voter issue.
Until 2008, this board, my board, we've not been able to negotiate the contracts with the deputies. They had, I believe it was an 8-year contract that was put in the year 2000. And so we've been working with the deputies, and I think we have a moderate relationship with their union. The real question, I believe, is not really one of, do we all want to pay them? Well, yes, we do. Do they get combat?
I mean, we'll probably have to repeat it anyway after our budget hearings, to repeat it soon before our budget hearings, because we're waiting for some additional information from the state.
That is an unfortunate outcome of the budgets that we've seen over the past few years, is just the uncertainty. What we have to do is prepare our budgets right now based on what we know. And we know
Very
nothing.
little.
I mean, we know what has happened in the past, so that's what the basis of our budgets are at this point. Our department heads who are dealing with the realignment areas, so human services, health, probation, the sheriff's office, are really looking at, okay, well, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? Right now, we're just doing the what ifs.
Right.
When action is taken, concrete action is taken, we'll be ready to follow up. And I will say it again, you've heard me say it before. We don't know what's going to happen, and especially now, we don't know what's going to happen. If, in cutting the $14 billion that the state has to cut, programs are eliminated, I will be recommending to the board that we, on a local level, eliminate those programs as well, because we cannot afford to carry on those programs on our own. So that's what I meant when I said, we're not done yet.
Hey, obviously, I'll never get my light fixed now after what I said. Who's going to get this fixed? I have a problem with 10% across the board cuts, because it doesn't necessarily address the real problem. And I'll give you an example. My question to each department goes, what do you need to run your department? Not what I'm going to give you, what do you need? And I'll give you an example. Why does the sheriff department need a open station in South Lake Tahoe? Can you do it with resident deputies? I want to know where things can actually be cut. That's why I'm at a loss, and I don't have any answers to make concrete decisions. I see our chief probation officer sitting in this room. He may need a ton of money before the end of the day. And it could become a critical factor for this county, and we have to respond to that. I don't know. It's what each department needs to run. And that's where everybody needs to look at their organization, they need to look at their structure and how they're delivering services. And if something can be done better in South Lake Tahoe, and I don't care if it's DOT or the Sheriff's Department or anybody out there, then we need to do that. Because we may have some critical things either to cut, or some things that are going to be on our back, and we don't have the manpower to handle it.
Okay. I'd like to get a couple words in here. What we do know is where we're at right now, financially.
Yeah, you know, Supervisor Nutting, if you know that, please tell me.
I will. We've been told by our CAO that we have a shortfall for 11-12 of 1.3 million. We do know where we've come from and where we're at right now. We have a lot of variables coming at us, but we do know the 1.3 as articulated and delineated as to how we got to the 1.3. And my question is that fact or fiction?
Well, based upon we just had some money fly out of Department 15, I have no idea. But I want you to tell me what the state's going to do.
No,
You told me you knew.
okay, John, I said we have facts that are on the table right now. The fact is, we have 1.3 that we have to target for 11-12. That's what we know. That's the best information we know. We know where we've come from. We know where we are now. The question you asked requires me to have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen with the state and a whole variety of variables like realignment, sales tax, property tax, on and on. So we do not have that, but what we should concentrate